May 15th, 1979. A dedicated nurse was traveling to her hometown in Michigan's Upper Peninsula with her 2 children. This seemingly ordinary evening would soon turn into a nightmare as she pulled into a rest area along Interstate 75 near Gaylord. Jane Snow was a 31-year-old nurse in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Recently divorced, she saw this as the perfect time to relocate herself and her 2 sons, Eric, age 9, and Mark, age 8, nearly 400 miles away to Escanaba in the Upper Peninsula, Jane's hometown. At about 3 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th, 1979, Jane, her 2 sons, the family dog, and the cat got into the car and headed north towards the Mackinac Bridge in Michigan's beautiful Upper Peninsula. 4.5 hours later, around 7:30 p.m., Jane pulled into the Loon Lake rest area on Interstate 75, a couple miles south of Gaylord, which is about an hour south of the Mackinac Bridge. Jane walked into the ladies' restroom, and her boys went into the men's. The boys came out after a couple minutes and took the dog down by Loon Lake. After some time had passed and Jane hadn't come out of the restroom, the boys walked in to check on her. There they found Jane motionless, laying on the floor in a pool of her own blood. The boys ran over to the nearby payphone to get help, but the phone was out of order. They then ran out to Interstate 75 and flagged down a vehicle. After investigators secured the crime scene, Jane Snow's body was taken for examination. Doctors found 22 stab wounds to her chest, back, and to both arms and both legs. Her wrist had been broken, and she was fully clothed. They determined that Jane had not been sexually assaulted, and it appeared that the contents of her purse were undisturbed. Investigators quickly ruled out rape and robbery as motives. Police were baffled. There was no evidence of a potential assailant being at the crime scene. No other cars had been in the parking lot besides Jane's, a 1974 Dodge, and there were no obvious signs, i.e., bloody footprints, of the perpetrator's exit from the crime scene. But yet a brutal crime did occur. In the 45-plus years since this brutal, senseless murder, several theories have been presented. One of the most popular early on was that Jane Snow may have become a victim of the serial killer Ronald Glenn West. But the murders linked to West all happened several hours' drive away in Canada, and West was known for shooting his victims with a small caliber handgun, not stabbing them. About 10 minutes after the murder, a hitchhiker was picked up by a Michigan State Police trooper walking southbound on Interstate 75 less than a mile away from the rest area. He had what appeared to be a blood stain on his shirt, and he did have scrapes on his hands. The trooper, unaware of the crime scene at the rest area, gave this hitchhiker a ride to the next exit and dropped him off. By the time the trooper found out about the murder and put that and the odd hitchhiker together, the man seemed to be long gone. But a day later, the man, whose name was John Magali, was located in Pontiac, 200 miles south along I-75. Investigators brought him in for questioning. Turns out John Magali was no stranger to local authorities, who had responded to Magali's home several times for domestic violence complaints. According to Magali, on the night of the Snow murder, he was in Indian River, about 30 miles north of Gaylord, drinking with his wife at a local bar. His wife would claim that while on their way home, John snapped and threw a beer bottle at the windshield, breaking it. The wife said she then kicked him out of the car and drove off. Magali would walk south along I-75 until he was picked up by the unsuspecting state trooper. As he was being questioned, he initially denied being picked up by the trooper, until that same trooper walked into the interview room. Police were able to obtain the blood-stained shirt Magali had been wearing the previous night, and testing showed that the blood on the shirt did not belong to Jane Snow. It was Magali's own blood. Although they were suspicious, but having no evidence other than he was near the crime scene at the right time, police were unable to charge him with Jane Snow's murder. But that didn't mean he just walked out of the police station. A routine check for warrants showed that Magali was wanted in Rhode Island for check fraud. He was arrested, held, and soon extradited to Rhode Island to stand trial. While serving his prison sentence in Rhode Island, a cellmate claimed that he confessed the murder of Jane Snow. Magali told him that he intended to take Jane's car, but instead of handing over the keys, she resisted, and as he panicked, he started stabbing her, leaving her to die on that bathroom floor. After he realized she was dead, he ran to the interstate and started to walk away from the crime scene. But if this jailhouse confession were true, why wasn't he covered in Jane Snow's blood? Why would he walk along an interstate after having committed so brutal a crime just up the road? And how could he have been so cool under pressure when he was picked up by the Michigan State Police 10 minutes after the crime? John Magali died of a suspected drug overdose shortly after being paroled from Rhode Island in 2017. Reports state that the cellmate that Magali allegedly confessed to was eventually released from prison, and his whereabouts are currently unknown. Today, almost 46 years later, Jane Snow's murder remains unsolved. If you have any information on this case, please contact the Michigan State Police Gaylord Post at area code 989-731-0123.